I go by Cassandra. At 32, I serve as a medical specialist in the armed forces. Following 9 exhausting months stationed abroad, my only desire was to embrace my daughter Emma, who's 14. Throughout my deployment, I'd been transmitting $2,000 monthly to my parents, who had agreed to look after her. The happiness of seeing her again transformed into bewilderment when I mentioned the financial support in passing. Emma stared at me with confusion and asked what I was referring to. My parents' faces turned ashen. My sister Amanda immediately shifted the conversation to something else. My heart sank into my gut. If you're currently watching, please leave a comment sharing your location. And don't forget to press that like button and subscribe if you're interested in learning what transpired after I uncovered that $18,000 designated for my daughter had disappeared. It being a solo parent with a career in the military wasn't part of my original plan. Existence has a tendency to reshape your intentions unexpectedly. 5 years back, Daniel, my husband, perished in an automotive collision, leaving our 9-year-old Emma and me behind. Daniel and I had been sweethearts since our teenage years, married early, and welcomed Emma when I turned 18. His passing devastated everything. Yet I needed to forge a path forward for Emma's sake. Military service had always been my alternative option. My dad had been in uniform, and despite our complex relationship, I held his service in high regard. With Daniel gone, the security of military healthcare and educational advantages became more attractive. I joined as a medical specialist, merging my healthcare interests with service to country. The compensation was reasonable, and the framework provided Emma and me with something crucial after Daniel's death: predictability. For 3 years, I successfully avoided overseas assignments. My commanding officer understood my circumstances and kept me stateside. Emma and I found our rhythm. We resided close to the base in a modest apartment. She formed friendships at her school, participated in soccer, and gradually her joy returned. Every evening I'd assist with her studies, and weekends meant film marathons or nature walks. We were mending together, then the directive I'd been fearing arrived. My medical team was being sent to a conflict area for 9 months. My stomach plummeted upon receiving notification. Emma was 13 at that point, developing her independence, navigating adolescence's complications. This was precisely when maternal presence mattered most. My parents resided in our hometown roughly 2 hours from the base. They'd retired early following my father's sale of his thriving construction enterprise. Their connection with Emma had been affectionate yet distant: holiday gatherings, sporadic weekend visits. My mother cherished Emma but found it challenging to match the energy a young teenager demanded. My father showed gentleness toward her that he'd never displayed with me. My younger sister Amanda lived in their vicinity with her spouse. They remained childless despite their efforts. Amanda had consistently envied my bond with our parents, convinced they preferred me despite contrary evidence. We maintained politeness but lacked closeness. With few alternatives, I approached my parents regarding Emma's care during deployment. They consented immediately, appearing genuinely pleased to assist. We discussed every detail: her academic schedule, extracurricular pursuits, dietary preferences, social circle, and emotional requirements. The financial terms were explicit. I'd wire $2,000 each month to their account exclusively for Emma. This would encompass her meals, attire, school materials, activities, transit, entertainment, and permit some savings toward her future. The sum was generous, nearly half my deployment earnings, but Emma merited every cent. My parents protested it was excessive, but I wanted Emma to sustain her lifestyle quality and perhaps enjoy extras to offset my absence. I arranged the automatic withdrawals through my military banking institution. The initial payment would arrive the day following Emma's move-in and persist on each month's first day. I displayed confirmation of the arrangement to my parents and they recognized the agreement. The week preceding deployment involved frantic preparation. Emma and I packed her items, toured her new school, and arranged her bedroom at my parents' residence. I purchased a special journal where she could write letters when video communication wasn't feasible. We created a communication routine accounting for the 13-hour time gap and security limitations. The evening before departure, Emma climbed into my bed as she had following Daniel's death. "Will you remain safe, Mom?" she murmured. I couldn't guarantee absolute safety, but I promised carefulness, to contemplate her with every choice, and to return home. 9 months will pass quickly, I stated, not believing my own words. And I'll call whenever possible. Departing from Emma at my parents' residence the following morning ranked among the hardest things I'd ever done. She attempted bravery, but as I entered the taxi, her composure shattered. She chased the vehicle, crying. My father restrained her. Watching through the back window, my own tears streaming freely, the image of her distressed face and reaching arms stayed with me throughout deployment. The homeward flight seemed endless. Following 9 months in a dusty field hospital treating casualties I'd never forget, American territory appeared like heaven. I'd managed to schedule my return 3 days prior to Christmas, intending to surprise Emma rather than disclose my precise arrival date. If delays occurred, I couldn't endure disappointing her twice. My sister Amanda collected me from the airport. She appeared tense, though I attributed this to seasonal stress. During the drive to my parents' home, she provided family updates, carefully avoiding specific Emma mentions except noting she'd grown considerably and I'd be amazed. The reunion with Emma fulfilled everything I'd envisioned during solitary deployment nights. Upon entering, she was decorating holiday cookies in the kitchen. She released the frosting bag and propelled herself into my embrace with force that nearly toppled us both. I held her firmly, immediately noticing she'd grown taller, her features more mature, less childlike. "You're actually here," she repeated, touching my face as if verifying my reality. "I missed you terribly, Mom." My parents hovered close by, their expressions mixing joy with something I couldn't identify. My father embraced me awkwardly while my mother commented on my weight loss and fatigued appearance. The residence was decorated beautifully for Christmas with an enormous tree and elaborate decorations I didn't recognize from past years. That initial evening overflowed with emotions. We dined together, Emma positioned so near that eating proved challenging. She barely touched her meal, too occupied recounting school events, her friends, and books she'd read. I noticed her jeans were somewhat short and her sweater had frayed elbows, though I assumed these were simply preferred comfort garments. When Emma mentioned struggling to finish a science project because she couldn't afford materials, a subtle warning signal sounded in my thoughts. My mother swiftly interrupted that they'd eventually resolved it. My father redirected conversation to my overseas experiences, carefully avoiding financial mentions. As Emma guided me to my quarters, I observed my parents' new furnishings throughout the residence. The living room collection was obviously recent, a style my mother had admired in magazines for years. My father's study featured a new computer arrangement appearing expensive. In the driveway sat a late-model SUV I didn't recognize, which Amanda explained was Dad's new acquisition. Emma appeared healthy and content overall, yet minor details troubled me. Her phone remained the same model from my departure, now severely cracked. When I inquired why she hadn't replaced it, she shrugged and stated it functioned adequately. She mentioned babysitting neighbors and assisting at a local cafe weekends to earn spending money, which seemed unnecessary given the funds I'd transmitted that night. Following Emma's sleep in my bed, unwilling to release me, I examined my banking application. Every transfer had processed exactly as intended. 9 payments of $2,000 each, totaling $18,000. The money had definitely reached my parents' account. I considered direct inquiry but decided to wait. Perhaps a simple explanation existed. Perhaps they were saving money for Emma's college fund as a surprise. Perhaps I was being paranoid following months in a combat zone where trust could prove dangerous. The following morning, I awakened to find Emma had prepared breakfast for me, though just toast and fruit. "Grandma says we need grocery shopping today," she explained. "We don't have much food currently." My sister Amanda arrived mid-morning with her husband, bringing Christmas gifts and additional questions in my mind. She wore a new diamond tennis bracelet she kept touching, explaining it was an early Christmas present. When Emma admired it, Amanda promised to take her shopping when we can afford it, casting my parents a quick glance I couldn't interpret. Throughout the day, I noticed additional inconsistencies. Emma had outgrown most garments but possessed few new items. Her winter boots had been repaired with duct tape. Her school backpack was literally disintegrating at the seams. None of this corresponded with the generous allowance I'd provided. By my return's second day, the inconsistencies couldn't be ignored. While assisting Emma organize her room, I casually mentioned the monthly allowance. "I hope the money I transmitted was sufficient for everything you required," I said. Folding a stack of t-shirts that all appeared at least a year old, Emma stopped arranging books on her shelf and turned to me with genuine confusion. "What money?" The question struck me like a physical impact. I maintained my voice carefully neutral. "The $2,000 I sent monthly for your expenses." Emma's eyebrows elevated. "You sent money? Grandma and Grandpa said you couldn't afford sending anything because of your deployment expenses. They said we needed careful spending because they were covering everything." At that moment, my parents materialized in the doorway. They must have been listening. My mother's face lost color and my father suddenly became intensely focused on a carpet spot. My sister, passing by with a laundry basket, stopped abruptly. "Hey, who wants hot chocolate? I'm making some with those peppermint marshmallows Emma loves." The transparent deflection attempt confirmed my growing suspicion. Something was seriously wrong. I smiled at Emma, not wanting to alarm her. "That sounds nice. We'll be down momentarily." Once the others had departed, I closed the bedroom door and sat beside Emma on her bed. Honey, I need you to tell me exactly what transpired with money while I was gone. The story Emma told broke my heart piece by piece. My parents had informed her from the beginning that I couldn't send money due to deployment complications. They provided her basic necessities but complained frequently about the financial burden of her care. Emma had started weekend work at a local cafe at 14, using her earnings for school supplies, activity fees, and occasionally new clothing. I didn't want to request anything, Emma explained, tears forming. You were doing something so important and Grandma said you were already stressed about money. I sold my iPad to pay for the science trip, and when the soccer team needed new uniform fees, I just quit because I knew Grandma and Grandpa couldn't afford it. I pulled her into a tight embrace, my mind calculating. $18,000 would have covered all her needs many times over. The new furnishings, my father's vehicle, my sister's bracelet, and countless other improvements around the residence suddenly made sickening sense. Did Grandma and Grandpa ever give you an allowance? I asked, already knowing the response. Emma shook her head. They gave me $10 for my birthday. Grandma said times were tight. That evening, while Emma was bathing, I discreetly examined my parents' home office. In a desk drawer, I found vacation brochures for a Caribbean cruise scheduled for February. The booking confirmation displayed a sweet package costing over $5,000. In another folder were receipts for jewelry, electronics, and clothing totaling thousands more. When I checked Emma's school portal using her login credentials, I saw her grades had declined significantly. Comments from teachers noted increased tardiness and incomplete assignments. One teacher had written, "Emma appears tired in class." She mentioned weekend work shifts interfering with homework time. The reality was becoming undeniable. My parents had systematically redirected funds meant for Emma's care to finance their own lifestyle improvements. My daughter had been working while attending school full-time, selling her possessions and going without necessities. Despite my explicit financial support, when Emma mentioned missing a dentist appointment because the insurance was complicated, I nearly lost my composure. I had provided complete documentation of her military-dependent insurance coverage requiring no payment for routine care. Later that night, I cornered my sister in the kitchen after everyone else had retired. "Did you know they were taking Emma's money?" I asked directly. Amanda fidgeted with her bracelet. "I didn't know the whole story," she hedged. "Mom and Dad mentioned you sent some money for emergencies, but said it wasn't much. They complained about expenses frequently. They received $2,000 every month. Specifically for Emma," I stated flatly. Amanda had the decency to appear shocked at the amount, though I doubted her surprise was genuine. "Well, childcare is expensive," she eventually said. "They deserve something for taking her in." "Taking her in? She's their granddaughter, not a stray animal," I replied, struggling to maintain low volume. "And I would have happily paid them separately for their time if they'd asked. That money was explicitly for Emma's needs." Amanda shrugged uncomfortably. "You should talk to them, not me. I'm sure they had their reasons." As I lay awake that night with Emma sleeping soundly beside me, I formulated a plan. The betrayal cut deeply, but impulsive confrontation would only create more trauma for Emma during what should be a happy reunion. Christmas was 2 days away. Extended family would be arriving. I needed to be strategic, not emotional. The following morning, I woke early and drove to a nearby coffee shop with free Wi-Fi. Emma was still sleeping, exhausted from the emotional excitement of my return. I needed privacy for what came next. First, I downloaded my complete banking records for the past 9 months, documenting every $2,000 transfer with dates, confirmation numbers, and account details. The paper trail was unambiguous. Next, I called my unit's legal assistance office. As an active duty service member, I had access to free legal counsel. I explained the situation without emotion, focusing on facts. The attorney on call advised me that what my parents had done could potentially qualify as financial exploitation, particularly given that the funds were designated for a minor's care. He promised to email relevant documentation and offered to connect me with local resources. When I returned to the house, my mother was preparing breakfast, acting as if nothing was amiss. "We're going to the mall later to finish Christmas shopping," she announced. "Do you need anything?" "Actually, I'd like to take Emma shopping for some clothes," I replied. "I noticed she's outgrown most of what she has." My mother's smile faltered. "We got her some things a few months ago. Kids grow so fast at this age." "I can see that," I said pleasantly. "She could use new winter boots, too. The duct tape repair is creative, but not very warm." My mother busied herself with pancake batter. "Things have been tight, you know. Your father's medication costs went up." This was news to me. "What medication? Is Dad okay?" "Oh, just blood pressure. Nothing serious." She waved dismissively, then added, "But insurance only covers part of it." My father had excellent retirement health coverage that I knew included prescription benefits. Another lie, while Emma and I were getting ready to leave, I overheard my parents arguing in their bedroom. She knows something, my mother hissed. You need to stick to the story about medical expenses. What about the car? My father responded. We can't exactly hide that. Say it was a good deal you couldn't pass up. Use your retirement account excuse. And the cruise brochures in the office? My sister's voice joined the conversation. I told you to hide those. Just keep things normal through Christmas. She'll go back to base soon anyway. Their casual assumption that I would simply return to duty without addressing the situation infuriated me, but I maintained my composure. This was about evidence gathering now. At the mall, Emma and I had our first truly private conversation. Over lunch in the food court, I asked her more about the past 9 months. Each new detail strengthened my resolve. I worked every Saturday and Sunday morning at Café Luna, she explained. The owner, Mrs. Garcia, gave me extra shifts during school breaks. That's how I bought my Christmas presents this year. Did Grandma and Grandpa know you were working so much? Emma nodded. They drove me sometimes, but usually I rode my bike. It's about 2 miles each way. In winter? I asked, remembering the harsh local weather. It wasn't so bad, she shrugged. I wore lots of layers. I learned that Emma had sold not just her iPad, but also the collection of fantasy novels I'd given her over the years, her wireless headphones, and even the silver locket containing a photo of her father and me. Mr. Winters at the pawn shop gave me $50 for the locket, she said, eyes downcast. I needed it for the graphing calculator for math class. Grandma said they were too expensive and I should borrow one, but nobody would lend theirs for the whole semester. Each revelation was a fresh wound, but I maintained a supportive demeanor. You did what you thought was right, Emma. I'm proud of your resourcefulness, but I wish you hadn't needed to work so hard or sell your treasured possessions. That afternoon, I insisted on driving Emma to visit her friend Lily, giving me an opportunity to speak with Lily's mother, Kate. We had been friendly before my deployment, and I trusted her perspective. Kate confirmed my fears. We were all concerned about Emma, she admitted after Emma had gone upstairs. She would never join the girls for weekend activities because of work. She wore the same few outfits repeatedly. At Lily's birthday sleepover, she didn't bring a gift and was so embarrassed we pretended it had gotten lost. Did she ever mention money problems? I asked. She said her grandparents were on a fixed income and couldn't afford extras. We offered to pay her way several times, but she refused. Such a proud girl, Kate hesitated. I hope you don't mind, but I bought her new jeans and gave them to her as a random gift. Her pants were inches too short by spring. I thanked Kate for her kindness and asked if she would be willing to provide a written statement about her observations if needed. She agreed without hesitation. While Emma visited with Lily, I drove to her school. The building was closed for winter break, but I had scheduled an appointment with her guidance counselor, Mrs. Reynolds, who had agreed to meet briefly. Mrs. Reynolds' assessment was equally troubling. Emma's academic performance dropped noticeably around March. She went from straight A's to mostly C's and B's. Her math teacher reported she often fell asleep in class. When we discussed it, Emma attributed it to working weekend mornings starting at 5:30. Did anyone contact my parents about this? Multiple times. They assured us it was temporary and that Emma was just adjusting to your absence. When we suggested reducing her work hours, they said it was Emma's choice and built character. Mrs. Reynolds looked troubled. We were concerned, but without evidence of neglect, our options were limited. I thanked her for meeting during the holiday and asked if the school had documentation of these conversations. She assured me they maintained detailed records of all parent communications. By evening, when we returned to my parents' house, I had gathered substantial evidence: photographs of Emma's inadequate clothing and worn shoes, testimony from her friend's mother, school documentation of academic decline, work verification from her employer, and bank records proving the money transfers. I also had Emma's journal, which she had voluntarily shared with me. Her entries documented numerous instances of being told they couldn't afford basic items she needed, her grandparents' frequent complaints about financial burden, and her own guilt about being expensive to keep. One particularly heartbreaking entry read, "Called Mom today but couldn't tell her about needing money for the field trip. She looked so tired on the video call and Grandma said Mom is struggling to pay for her own food on deployment. I'll just tell my teacher I'm sick that day." That night I helped Emma wrap Christmas presents for the family. She had spent her cafe earnings on thoughtful but inexpensive gifts: homemade cookies for relatives, a coffee mug for my father, a scarf for my mother, and a photo frame for me. Meanwhile, I had noticed shopping bags from luxury retailers hidden in my parents' closet when I was searching for wrapping paper. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. While my daughter worked weekends and sold cherished possessions to afford a $10 photo frame, My parents had diverted thousands of dollars meant for her care to fund luxuries for themselves. Christmas was tomorrow. Extended family would gather, and I would be ready. Christmas Eve morning dawned bright and cold. I had barely slept, my mind cycling through various approaches to the confrontation ahead. Emma sensed my distraction but attributed it to readjustment from deployment. In reality, I was executing a carefully considered plan. Step 1 was financial protection. While Emma helped my mother prepare breakfast, I visited the local branch of my bank. As a precaution, I had already frozen the automatic transfers from my deployment account. Now, I established a new checking account with Emma as a joint holder, transferring funds from my savings to cover her immediate needs. The banker, a veteran herself, expedited the process when I explained I had just returned from deployment. Next, I called Lieutenant Colonel Richards, my former commanding officer and a trusted mentor. Now retired and practicing family law, she had offered guidance during difficult situations in the past. When I explained the circumstances, her advice was measured but firm. Document everything, Cassandra. Texts, emails, bank statements, photos. Wisconsin has specific statutes addressing financial exploitation of dependents that may apply here. She paused. Are you planning to confront them today? Extended family will be present, I explained. Witnesses make denial harder. Just remember this is ultimately about Emma's well-being. Whatever approach causes her the least additional trauma should guide your decisions. She was right, of course. This couldn't be about revenge or even justice in a conventional sense. It needed to be about recovery, financial and emotional. For Emma. My third call was to Staff Sergeant Martinez from my unit, now working in the JAG office. He confirmed that military family service centers could provide resources, including emergency financial assistance if needed, though my careful saving had made this unnecessary. More importantly, he offered to connect me with a victim advocate who specialized in financial recovery cases. The power dynamic with parents is complicated, he noted. Having a neutral third party can help maintain boundaries during resolution. By mid-morning, I had secured legal consultation, financial protection, and support resources. Now came the most difficult step, a private conversation with Emma about what would happen next. I took her to a nearby park, away from prying ears. The winter playground was deserted, allowing us privacy on a bench overlooking the frozen pond. Honey, we need to talk about something important, I began. It's about the money I sent for your care while I was deployed. Emma tensed immediately. Are Grandma and Grandpa in trouble? They were nice to let me stay. This isn't about gratitude or blame right now, I said carefully. It's about facts. I sent $2,000 every month specifically for your needs. Clothes, school activities, maybe some fun experiences to make my absence easier. That money never reached you. Emma's expression crumpled. They said you couldn't afford to send anything, that caring for me was straining their retirement. That wasn't true, I said gently. I sent more than enough to cover everything you needed and then some. Emma processed this information slowly, her analytical mind connecting dots. The new car, Mom's jewelry, the kitchen renovation, I nodded. Possibly, yes. Her face flushed with anger, then embarrassment. I worked every weekend making coffee for strangers while they spent my money on stuff. I sold Dad's locket. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I thought I was helping by not asking for things. I thought we were all struggling together. I pulled her close as she sobbed against my shoulder. This was the rawness I had hoped to avoid, yet it was necessary for her to understand she had done nothing wrong. You did help, Emma. You showed incredible responsibility and maturity. I'm so proud of you for that. But you should never have had to sacrifice your education, your possessions, or your limited childhood free time. That responsibility was mine, and I entrusted it to people who failed us both. When her tears subsided, I explained my plan. Tonight, when everyone is here, I'm going to address this directly. It might be uncomfortable. Are you okay with that, or would you prefer to stay with Lily's family? Emma straightened her shoulders. I want to be there. They lied to me all year, Mom. I want to hear what they say. I nodded, respecting her choice while making a mental note to watch her reactions carefully. After tonight, we have options. We can stay here through Christmas if you want to see the extended family, or we can go to a hotel or even head back to base early. This is your call, too. What about the money? She asked. I'll handle that part, I assured her. Your job is to focus on healing and enjoying our reunion. Let me worry about the financial recovery. Emma considered this, then asked the question that revealed her fundamental goodness. Will Grandma and Grandpa go to jail? That's not my goal, I answered honestly. My goal is accountability and restoration. They need to acknowledge what they did and make meaningful amends. If they can't do that, then legal consequences might become necessary, but that would be their choice, not mine. Emma nodded, seeming relieved. Despite everything, she cared about her grandparents. This compassion in the face of betrayal made me even more determined to handle the situation with calculated precision rather than emotional reaction. Back at the house, preparations for the evening gathering were underway. My sister and her husband had arrived early to help. My mother was preparing elaborate appetizers in the kitchen, periodically shooting me nervous glances. My father was setting up extra chairs in the living room, his movements stiff with unspoken tension. I maintained a calm, neutral demeanor while finalizing my approach. The confrontation needed to be direct but controlled, factual rather than accusatory, and focused on resolution rather than punishment. Most importantly, it needed to acknowledge Emma's experience without making her the center of uncomfortable attention, while everyone was busy. I slipped into the home office and connected my phone to the printer. The documentation I had gathered formed a compelling narrative: bank statements showing the transfers, photos of Emma's inadequate clothing and school supplies, work records from the cafe showing her weekend shifts, school reports documenting her academic decline, and statements from her teacher, counselor, and friend's mother. I organized these materials into 3 identical folders, adding a typed summary of events and a proposed resolution plan. One folder would remain with me, one would be presented to my parents, and one would be given to my Aunt Susan, my father's sister and the family matriarch, whose moral authority was respected by all. As evening approached, I helped Emma prepare for the gathering. We had purchased a new outfit during our shopping trip, and she looked beautiful and age-appropriate in a festive sweater and jeans that actually fit. The simple dignity of proper clothing brought a lump to my throat. "Ready?" I asked as we heard the first guests arriving. Emma squeezed my hand. "Ready, Mom." We descended the stairs together, stepping into the gathering storm with heads held high. By 7 o'clock on Christmas Eve, the house was filled with extended family. My father's sisters, Susan and Elaine, had arrived with their husbands. My mother's brother, Robert, and his wife came bearing elaborately wrapped gifts. Cousins with spouses and children completed the gathering, creating a festive atmosphere tinged with the awkwardness that often characterizes family holiday events. Emma stayed close to me, receiving hugs and exclamations about how much she'd grown. My sister Amanda hovered nearby, her smile fixed but her eyes watchful. My parents played perfect hosts, my father mixing drinks while my mother arranged food platters, both carefully maintaining the appearance of a normal family. Christmas, Aunt Susan pulled me aside early in the evening. "You look tired, Cassandra. That deployment must have been rough." The deployment was difficult, I acknowledged. But what I found upon returning home has been equally challenging. Something in my tone made her study me more closely. "Is everything all right with Emma?" "We'll be discussing that during dinner," I replied. "I'd appreciate your attention when we do." My aunt, never one to miss subtleties, nodded slowly. "You know I'm always in your corner." Dinner was served buffet style at 8 o'clock, with everyone finding seats around the extended dining table and adjacent card tables set up for the occasion. I strategically positioned myself at the main table with Emma beside me, directly across from my parents. Aunt Susan sat to my right, completing the critical sight lines for what would follow. Conversation flowed around typical family topics: Cousin Jamie's new job, Uncle Robert's knee replacement, the children's school achievements. I participated minimally, waiting for the natural lull that would come after everyone had been served and settled. When that moment arrived, I gently tapped my water glass with a spoon. The conversations gradually quieted as attention turned my way. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," I began, my voice steady. "Being home for Christmas after 9 months deployed is a gift I don't take for granted. Having Emma back in my arms is everything I dreamed about during difficult days overseas." Murmurs of appreciation and supportive comments rippled around the table. While I was gone, I continued, "I made arrangements to ensure Emma would be well cared for. This included sending $2,000 home each month specifically for her needs." I paused, watching my parents' expressions shift from social smiles to frozen masks. That totaled $18,000 over 9 months. My mother's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her wine glass. My father stared fixedly at his plate. "Yesterday, I discovered that Emma never received any benefit from those funds. In fact, she was told that I couldn't afford to send money and that her presence was a financial burden." A shocked silence fell over the table. Emma looked down at her lap, uncomfortable with the attention yet resolute in her quiet dignity. While Emma worked weekends at a local cafe to pay for school supplies and sold personal possessions to afford field trips, these funds were diverted to home renovations, a new vehicle, luxury items, and vacation planning. My sister Amanda interjected, her voice artificially bright. "I'm sure there's a misunderstanding about the expenses involved in raising a teenager. Perhaps we should discuss this privately after dinner." "There's no misunderstanding," I replied evenly, sliding the folders from beneath my chair. These contain complete documentation, bank transfers, Emma's work records, statements from school officials, and testimony from community members who witnessed her going without necessities. I placed one folder in front of my parents and handed the other to Aunt Susan, whose expression had hardened into something resembling her brother's face when he was especially disappointed. Emma maintained a 3.2 grade point average while working weekends, received no allowance, missed medical appointments, and was denied participation in school activities due to supposed financial constraints. My voice remained measured despite the anger burning beneath my words. Meanwhile, $18,000 that should have provided her a comfortable life instead furnished this house and funded luxuries I'm still discovering. My father finally spoke, his voice defensive. Now wait a minute. Do you have any idea what it costs to raise a child these days? Food, utilities, transportation, I do know, I interrupted. I've been raising her alone for 5 years. $2,000 monthly was calculated to cover all reasonable expenses several times over. We never agreed to an accounting of every penny, my mother said, attempting indignation. We provided a home, supervision, and love. Love doesn't send a 14-year-old girl to work at 5:30 in the morning while her guardians sleep in, I countered. Love doesn't force a child to sell her father's locket to buy a calculator for school. Emma flinched at this revelation, and several relatives gasped audibly. My Uncle Robert, always the family peacemaker, tried to intervene. Surely there were misunderstandings on both sides. There was no misunderstanding, Emma said suddenly, her voice small but determined. Grandma specifically told me Mom couldn't afford to send money because of deployment expenses. When I needed $65 for the Science Museum trip, she said they couldn't spare it, so I sold my iPad. I worked every weekend for months so I wouldn't be a burden. The raw honesty of her statement silenced every attempt at deflection. My mother's face crumpled, whether from shame or being caught. I couldn't tell why Father tried a different approach. We may have mismanaged some aspects of the arrangement, but we provided a safe home. Childcare has value, too. If you felt you deserved compensation for your time, you should have said so, I replied. I would have gladly provided it separately. Instead, you chose to lie to Emma about my financial support while using funds designated for her care for personal luxuries. Aunt Susan, who had been silently reviewing the documentation, looked up with cold fury. A Caribbean cruise, Thomas? While your granddaughter worked as a barista and wore duct-taped boots. My father had the decency to look ashamed, but my mother attempted one more deflection. We planned to pay it back. We had unexpected expenses this year. What expenses justified taking from a child in your care? I asked. The kitchen renovation? The jewelry? The new patio furniture? When no answer came, I continued to the next phase of my planned approach. I'm not interested in public humiliation or family division. I'm interested in accountability and making this right for Emma. These are my terms: full accounting and repayment of the funds, a direct apology to Emma acknowledging the specific harm done, and a written agreement regarding any future financial or guardianship arrangements. Or what? My father asked, a hint of his old authority creeping into his voice. Or I will file formal charges of financial exploitation of a dependent minor, I stated calmly. My military legal counsel has already outlined the potential consequences, both criminal and civil. My sister, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly found her voice. You would see your own parents after they took Emma in when you chose to deploy. I didn't choose deployment, Amanda. I received orders, which I followed while trusting my family to honor their commitments to my child. I turned to face her directly. And yes, I would pursue legal remedies if necessary, just as I would for any other form of child neglect or exploitation. I knew nothing about this, she insisted weakly. Your new bracelet suggests otherwise, I observed. As does your presence during conversations about keeping the story straight regarding the missing money. The extended family sat in stunned silence. Uncle Robert's wife was openly crying. Aunt Susan had moved to sit beside Emma, her arm protectively around my daughter's shoulders. What happens now? My mother asked, her voice small. Tonight, nothing more. This is Christmas Eve, and I won't rob the family of their celebration. Emma and I will participate as planned. I looked around the table. But come December 26th, I expect to begin a structured resolution process. The choice of whether that happens privately or through legal channels is yours. As if on cue, the doorbell rang. The timing was coincidental, but the interruption served as a perfect punctuation to my statement. My father rose automatically to answer it. He returned moments later with a startled expression, holding a certified envelope. It's for you, he said, extending it toward me. I recognized the return address of the legal assistance office on base. The documents I had requested earlier, formal templates for restitution agreements and financial accountability, had arrived with perfect dramatic timing. Taking the envelope, I said simply, "Thank you. These will help us move forward constructively." The remainder of the dinner proceeded in uncomfortable waves of forced conversation and awkward silences. Extended family members processed the revelation in various ways, some offering Emma quiet words of support, others attempting to broker immediate reconciliation, a few simply observing with the fascination reserved for witnessing private family implosions. Through it all, Emma maintained remarkable composure, accepting comfort without seeking pity, answering questions honestly but without elaboration. I had never been prouder of her strength and grace under pressure. Later that night, as guests departed with subdued holiday wishes, Aunt Susan pulled me aside. "I'll help ensure they make this right," she promised. "What they did was unconscionable." "Thank you," I replied sincerely. "My goal is resolution, not destruction. Emma still loves them despite everything." "You're a better person than I would be in your position," she observed. "Not better. Not better," I corrected. "Just focused on what matters most. Emma needs healing more than I need retribution." As we prepared for bed that night, Emma asked the question that had clearly been weighing on her mind. "Will we ever be a normal family again?" I considered my answer carefully. "We'll be a different family, one built on truth and accountability rather than comfortable lies. Whether your grandparents can be part of that depends on their choices now." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "I'm glad you came home when you did, Mom." "So am I, sweetheart," I whispered, holding her close. "So am I." The knock at the door on December 26th came precisely at 10 o'clock in the morning. My parents, who had maintained careful distance during Christmas Day celebrations, exchanged apprehensive glances. My sister Amanda and her husband had arrived minutes earlier. Completing the circle of those directly involved in the situation, Emma sat beside me on the sofa, her posture reflecting the confidence our honest conversations had begun to rebuild. Aunt Susan had insisted on being present as a neutral family witness, positioning herself, literally and figuratively, between the opposing sides of the living room. My father opened the door to reveal Mr. Harrington, the attorney from the base legal assistance office, who had agreed to facilitate our discussion. His presence immediately established the seriousness of the proceedings without escalating to courtroom formality. "Thank you all for agreeing to this mediation," Mr. Harrington began after introductions. "My role today is to help structure a conversation that addresses the financial discrepancies that occurred during Cassandra's deployment and establish a framework for resolution." The clinical description of what had happened as financial discrepancies, rather than theft or exploitation, set a tone of problem-solving rather than punishment. This was deliberate, part of the strategy we had discussed to maximize the chances of actual restitution rather than defensive obstruction. For the next 3 hours, we engaged in a methodical process of accountability. My parents, faced with the comprehensive documentation I had gathered and the gentle but firm guidance of Mr. Harrington, gradually abandoned their defensive posture. My father, always more straightforward than my mother, was the first to acknowledge the full reality of their actions. "We did divert the funds," he admitted finally. "It started small, using part of the first payment to fix the dishwasher. Then it became easier to justify using more for other household improvements, telling ourselves it benefited Emma indirectly. By the 3rd month, we were treating the money as general income." My mother, tearful but still struggling with full admission, added, "We convinced ourselves we deserved it for taking her in. That childcare was worth compensation." She looked at Emma with genuine remorse. "But we should never have told you your mother sent nothing. That was cruel and manipulative." Step by step, Mr. Harrington guided us through a complete accounting of the diverted funds. The total, including the planned cruise that had been fully paid, exceeded the $18,000 I had sent. My parents had literally spent money they hadn't yet received, anticipating future transfers. The resolution plan took shape with surprising cooperation once the full acknowledgement occurred. My parents agreed to a structured repayment schedule, beginning with the immediate cancellation and refund of the cruise. They would sell my father's new car and return to their previous vehicle. My mother's recent jewelry purchases would be returned or sold, for funds that couldn't be immediately recovered. They committed to monthly payments of $1,000 until the debt was fully repaid. Mr. Harrington formalized this in a legally binding agreement. That included consequences for non-compliance. The most important element from my perspective was the direct apology to Emma. Mr. Harrington wisely suggested this occur without an audience. So my parents spoke privately with Emma while the rest of us stepped onto the porch. When they emerged 20 minutes later, Emma's eyes were red, but her expression was peaceful. Whatever had been said had begun the healing process. "I believe we have a workable resolution," Mr. Harrington concluded, collecting signatures on multiple copies of the agreement. This provides accountability while preserving family relationships, which I understand is the primary goal. As he prepared to leave, my father asked the question that had clearly been weighing on him. Could you have pursued criminal charges for this? Mr. Harrington nodded solemnly. Financial exploitation of a dependent is taken very seriously, particularly when the guardian is entrusted with funds for the dependent's care. The documented deception and the minor's resulting hardship would have made a compelling case. The gravity of what they had narrowly avoided settled visibly on my parents' shoulders. My mother whispered. Thank you for not taking that route. This was never about punishment, I replied quietly. It was about making things right for Emma. In the weeks that followed, our new reality took shape. Emma and I remained in town through New Year's, staying at a hotel rather than my parents' house. This physical separation provided emotional space for everyone to process what had happened while maintaining the family connection Emma still wanted. The financial restitution began immediately. My parents sold the new car within days, applying the proceeds to the outstanding balance. My mother returned unworn clothing and unused household items. My father took on consulting work to supplement their retirement income, enabling the monthly payments. Emma's physical needs were more easily addressed than her emotional ones. We replaced her outdated phone and worn clothing. I insisted on buying back her father's locket from the pawn shop, paying well above market value to compensate for the sentimental loss. Her iPad was replaced, along with the books she had sold. The deeper healing required professional guidance. When we returned to base in January, Emma began working with a therapist specializing in trust issues and family dynamics. Initially reluctant, she gradually embraced the process of understanding and processing her feelings of abandonment and betrayal. My sister Amanda reached out in February with her own apology. I should have questioned what was happening, she admitted during a video call. I saw the signs but chose to look away because it was easier. Were you benefiting from the money, too? I asked directly, her hesitation answered before her words did. The bracelet was a gift from Mom. I didn't know specifically where the money came from. But I should have questioned how they could afford it when they were supposedly struggling with Emma's expenses. Our relationship remained strained but civil, with potential for improvement through continued honesty. By April, Emma's academic performance had returned to her previous excellence. Freed from the burden of weekend work and financial stress, she rejoined the soccer team and developed new friendships. The resilience of youth, combined with proper support, enabled her recovery faster than I had dared hope. My parents maintained their repayment schedule with perfect compliance. By the 6-month mark, they had returned nearly $12,000 through various means. More importantly, they respected the boundaries we had established, never pressuring for more access to Emma than she was comfortable giving. When my current assignment ended in June, I requested a transfer to a unit without deployment rotations. This required declining a promotion opportunity, but Emma's stability took precedence over career advancement. We relocated to a small house near the new base, establishing our own home after years of temporary arrangements. Emma's therapist suggested carefully structured visits with my parents as part of the healing process. The first, a day trip to a neutral location, was awkward but productive. My father, always more comfortable with action than words, had prepared a handmade jewelry box to hold the recovered locket. My mother had compiled a scrapbook of Emma's childhood photos, acknowledging the importance of preserving connections to her past. By summer's end, we had established a new normal. Emma spent weekends with friends rather than working. She started high school with confidence and clear boundaries. My parents continued their amends through consistent payments and respectful interactions. My sister and I maintained limited but improving communication. The betrayal would always be part of our family story, but it wouldn't define our future. The painful lessons in accountability, forgiveness, and conditional trust had transformed all of us. Last week, Emma asked if her grandparents could visit for Thanksgiving. Not staying with us, she clarified, but maybe dinner together. I think I'm ready for that. Her capacity for measured forgiveness humbled me. If you're ready, then yes, I agreed. Family is complicated, but it's still family. As I reflect on our journey from that shocking moment of what money to today's cautious rebuilding, I'm reminded that trust, once broken, can never be perfectly restored. But something new and potentially stronger can grow in its place, a relationship founded on accountability, clear boundaries, and earned rather than assumed trust. If you've experienced family betrayal or financial exploitation, please know that recovery is possible. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for healing. Accountability isn't vengeance, it's the foundation of any healthy relationship. And protecting those we love sometimes means making difficult choices that others may not understand. Have you ever had to rebuild trust with family members? What boundaries did you need to establish? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and recovery. Thank you for listening, and remember, even the deepest wounds can heal with proper care and time.